alien goddess grants human 3 wishes, but his first wish changes everything forever. Asterisk far beyond the edge of known space, a storm of shattered stars danced across the dark void. Through that endless night, a broken ship drifted silently. Its hull torn apart, its engines dead inside. A lone human named Ethan Cole woke up to the faint sound of air hissing from a cracked panel. His head pounded, his vision blurred, and for a moment he thought he was dead. But then he heard it a low, haunting hum, like a choir made of wind and thunder. He blinked through the smoke and saw light outside the wrecked window, a soft blue glow pulsing in the darkness. Somehow, impossibly, his ship had crashed onto the surface of something huge and ancient. It wasn't a planet. Not really, it was a structure. A vast temple made of black crystal that shimmered like liquid night. Its towers reached into the clouds, carved with symbols that twisted and changed every time he looked. Ethan forced himself to stand, his spacesuit torn and sparking. Every breath felt heavy, like breathing through fog. He limped toward the broken airlock, his hand trembling as he opened it. The moment he stepped out, gravity shifted, the air was thick, alive, and humming with strange energy. The ground beneath him glowed faintly with each step, as if the temple itself was watching him. "Hello?" he called, his voice echoing into the emptiness. No answer, only the sound of wind, and the faint rhythm of something like a heartbeat beneath the stone floor. He took another step, and suddenly the air trembled. The light dimmed, and in front of him a figure began to appear, rising from the ground like mist solidifying into form. At first, Ethan thought it was a hologram. Then he saw her eyes. They were not like any eyes he had seen before. They burned with twin golden suns, swirling and alive. Her body shimmered, half energy, half flesh, surrounded by strands of glowing silver hair that floated like smoke. She was beautiful, terrifying, and utterly alien. When she spoke, her voice echoed inside his mind instead of his ears. "You have trespassed upon the sacred grounds of the Eclipsera Temple. Mortal." Ethan fell to his knees, clutching his chest as her words struck like thunder. I didn't mean to. My ship crashed. I didn't even know this place was here," he stammered. The goddess studied him silently. Her gaze moved like a weight, pressing against his soul. "No mortal has walked these halls for 1,000 cycles," she said softly. "Yet you live, and that means fate has chosen you." Ethan didn't understand, but something in her tone made him shiver. She moved closer each step, echoing with sound that wasn't sound. Her light brushed against his arm, and in an instant his pain vanished. His wounds closed. He stared at her, breathless. Who are you?" "I am Seraphes, keeper of the Eternal Gate, the last of the Celestials who once ruled the stars," she replied. Her voice was calm, but there was sadness in it, an ancient sorrow hidden behind her divine strength. She looked at the empty temple around them, crumbling walls, dim light, and silence that stretched for eternity. "This place was once filled with light and songs," she whispered. "But now it remembers only dust." Ethan felt the weight of her loneliness, even though he couldn't explain why. Something about her didn't feel like a god. She felt like someone who had lost everything. He wanted to speak, to comfort her. But before he could, her eyes began to glow again. Her tone became powerful and divine once more. "By the ancient laws of the Celestials, you have entered forbidden's ground," she declared. "But I am merciful. For your intrusion, I will grant you 3 wishes. Whatever your human heart desires." Ethan froze. The air around him shimmered with energy. 3 glowing orbs appeared before him, pulsing with soft light. He could feel their power real, impossible, and alive. He could wish for anything, and the universe would obey. Yet, as he looked at the goddess, at her perfect, untouchable beauty. He didn't feel greed. He felt something else, something strange. A quiet sadness, deep and human. Why did a being so powerful look so lonely? Seraphez tilted her head, curious at his silence. Most mortals beg for gold, power, or immortality, she said softly. What is it that you desire, human? Ethan looked into her eyes, his voice trembling but steady. I don't know what to wish for yet, he admitted. But before anything, I just want to understand you. Her glow flickered, as if something inside her cracked for the briefest moment. No one has ever asked to understand a goddess, she whispered. More to herself than to him, the temple's light dimmed again, and the hum in the air turned gentle like a heartbeat slowing down. Ethan stood there, a fragile human before a divine being older than stars. Neither of them knew it yet, but this meeting would change the fate of both their worlds. The goddess looked at him one last time, her voice soft and echoing like fading starlight. Then let your heart decide, mortal. For your first wish will decide everything. The wind fell silent, the stars outside flickered, and in that sacred moment between human and God, destiny began to move. The air inside the ancient temple shimmered with quiet power. Ethan Cole stood before the alien goddess, his heart beating faster than the stars above. The glowing orbs that represented his 3 wishes floated around him, spinning slowly like small suns. Their light reflected in his eyes, 3 perfect chances to change his fate, to command the will of the cosmos itself. Seraphis, the goddess, stood in front of him like a living flame wrapped in silver light. Her presence was beautiful and terrifying at once. She did not blink, she did not breathe. She simply existed like the temple itself, eternal and unshakable. Her voice, when it came, echoed through the vast chamber and into the deepest parts of his mind. Speak, mortal, she said softly. Tell me your first wish. Ethan swallowed hard. He could feel her gaze burning through him, reading every thought, every fear, every hidden desire. He could wish for anything: riches, knowledge, even the power to go home. But when he looked at her, something inside him refused to think selfishly. He saw the cracks in her perfection, the loneliness behind her golden eyes, and somehow, he knew this goddess was more prisoner than queen. He hesitated. What if I make the wrong wish? He asked quietly. Seraphis tilted her head, her long silver hair moving like liquid light. There are no wrong wishes, she said. Only truths you are not ready to face. Her tone was calm. Yet beneath it was something fragile, something almost human. Ethan took a slow breath, his hands trembling. He thought of his broken ship, his lost crew, the silence of space, and then he looked at her again, standing alone among the ruins of her own eternity. I wish, he began. The words came out small, uncertain, but they carried a strange warmth. I wish you could feel what it's like to be human. The temple froze. The orbs stopped spinning. The light dimmed until only her golden eyes glowed in the dark. Seraphis didn't move, didn't speak, for a long moment. She only stared at him as if he had spoken an ancient curse. You wish that? She whispered finally, her voice trembling for the first time. Ethan nodded slowly. Yes. She stepped closer, her presence suddenly heavier, her light flickering like a dying star. Do you even understand what you ask? She demanded. Her voice thundered through the temple, shaking the crystal walls. To feel, to hunger, to fear, to lose, that is the curse of mortality. Ethan didn't step back. His voice was quiet, steady, and full of something she had never heard before: compassion. Maybe, he said, but it's also what makes us alive. The words cut through her like light through glass. For the first time in countless eons, the goddess looked uncertain. She reached out a trembling hand, touching his face with glowing fingers. Her touch sent a spark through his skin. a mixture of warmth and electricity. But this time, she felt something too. It was faint, but real, a heartbeat. Not her own. Echoing inside her, the temple began to react. Symbols carved into the walls flared with bright gold light. The air grew heavy. The ground shuddered beneath them. Energy surged around the goddess, spiraling like a storm. Her voice cracked as she cried out, "You don't understand what you've done." The light engulfed her completely. Ethan shielded his eyes. But he could still hear her scream, a sound that was not pain, but confusion. When the light faded, she was on her knees, gasping, trembling. Her radiant form had dimmed. Her glow soft and uneven. Her eyes blinked rapidly. And for the first time, they were filled with something new, fear. "What is this?" she whispered, clutching her chest. "I can hear it, beating inside me." Ethan knelt beside her carefully. "That's your heart," he said softly. She looked down, eyes wide, her breathing uneven. I can feel everything," she said. "The air is cold, the ground hurts, and my body." Her voice broke. "Why does it hurt to exist?" He smiled gently, though his heart ached for her. "Because that's what it means to live." She looked up at him, tears forming at the corners of her eyes, tears of light, shimmering like molten gold. "I have never cried before," she whispered. Her voice shaking, Ethan reached out, carefully brushing one glowing tear from her cheek. "Then it's your first," he said. "And that means you're already learning." Seraphis stared at him in disbelief. No mortal had ever spoken to her this way, without fear, without worship, without wanting something in return. Her chest rose and fell as she tried to steady herself. The temple's glow flickered, and a faint wind swept through the chamber, whispering like distant voices. "Do you feel it?" Ethan asked quietly. She nodded slowly, still shaking. "Yes," she said. "I feel small and fragile." Then her eyes softened. "And yet, I feel something else. Something warm when I look at you." Ethan didn't answer, but she saw the same warmth reflected in his gaze. Neither spoke for a long time. But the silence between them was no longer empty. It was alive. Then the temple groaned. The symbols on the walls began to shift, forming new patterns. Strange energy pulsed through the floor, and the air grew colder. Seraphis's expression darkened. "No," she whispered. "They are watching." "Who?" Ethan asked, alarmed. "The elders of the void," she said. Her voice filled with dread. "They feel my change, and they will not allow it." A beam of dark light sliced through the air, forming a floating sigil above them. A voice, deep and ancient, echoed from it. "Seraphis, keeper of the eternal gate, you have broken divine law." Ethan looked around in panic. "What's happening?" Seraphis stood, still weak but defiant. "The gods. They see emotion as corruption," she said, her voice trembling. "And you've made me feel." The sigil pulsed violently, sending out waves of black energy. Ethan fell to the floor, coughing. As the pressure crushed the air from his lungs, the goddess raised her hand, forming a barrier of light that cracked under the force. "Leave him!" she shouted at the voice. "He is under my protection." But the voice only laughed, cold and endless. "Then you are no longer one of us." The sigil shattered, sending sparks of darkness across the room. Seraphis fell to one knee, her light fading even more. Ethan crawled toward her, his voice hoarse. "You're bleeding. Energy's leaking out of you." She looked at him, a faint smile on her lips. "I think this is what pain feels like," she whispered. He caught her as she started to collapse, holding her in his arms. "You'll be okay," he said, trying to sound strong. But the look in her eyes told him she wasn't sure. As the temple settled into uneasy silence, her breathing steadied. She touched his hand and whispered softly, "You could have wished for anything." "Why this?" Ethan looked into her dimming golden eyes. "Because no one deserves to be trapped forever," he said. "Not even a goddess." She stared at him, stunned. In all the universe, no one had ever spoken such words to her. No one had ever wished for her freedom or her understanding, and for the first time since creation, Seraphis felt something deep within her that had no name, something that terrified and comforted her all at once. She whispered, almost to herself, "This mortal heart. It's dangerous." Ethan smiled faintly. "Yeah," he said, "but it's also beautiful. Outside." Thunder rolled across the alien horizon. The stars dimmed as if watching, waiting. Something vast and unseen stirred beyond the veil of space. And deep within the heart of the goddess, a single, fragile heartbeat echoed louder than the silence of eternity. The first wish had been granted, and nothing in the universe would ever be the same again. When dawn came to that lifeless alien world, the light was not from any sun, it was from her, the goddess who once shone brighter than galaxies. Now dimmed to a fragile glow, Seraphis sat near the edge of a broken pillar, her body trembling, her silver hair dull, her hands shaking. The air shimmered with strange beauty-soft winds carried starlight dust, and the ancient temple hummed like a sleeping giant. And for the first time in eternity, she felt cold. Ethan watched her quietly from a few steps away. He had built a small fire from the wreckage of his ship, its warm orange glow dancing across the crystal floor. She sat near it, shivering, eyes wide as she studied the flames like a child seeing light for the first time. "What is this?" she whispered, reaching toward it. "Fire," Ethan said softly. "It keeps us warm." Her hand trembled as she held it over the heat. She gasped and pulled back, her expression shocked. "It hurts." "But it feels alive," Ethan smiled faintly. "That's how life feels. Sometimes it burns. Sometimes it warms you." She looked at him, eyes filled with questions that even gods never dared ask. Hours passed, and she tried to stand. But the ground beneath her feet felt strange, unstable, uneven, real. She stumbled, and Ethan rushed forward, catching her. Their eyes met for a heartbeat, and something unspoken passed between them. He could feel her pulse through his hands. Quick and confused, she had no idea how to exist in this form. The goddess who once shaped stars now struggled just to stay standing. "I hate this feeling," she murmured. "What feeling?" he asked, helping her sit again. "Fear," she said quietly. "I have never been afraid before." Her voice cracked on the word, and she looked down at her hands as if they belonged to someone else. "They shake," she whispered. "And I don't know why." Ethan sat beside her, his tone gentle. "That's what fear does, it reminds us we're alive." Seraphis looked away, her golden eyes softening. She could feel the heartbeat again, loud, fragile, uncontrollable. It wasn't divine order, it was chaos. And somehow that chaos felt more real than eternity itself. The silence stretched between them, broken only by the sound of the flickering fire and her uneven breathing. Later, when the alien sky dimmed again, she spoke in a quiet, trembling voice. "Ethan, when you made that wish, why?" He looked up from the dying flames. "Because I saw something in your eyes," he said simply. "A sadness you didn't even know you had." Her gaze dropped, her expression unreadable. "I didn't think gods could be sad," he added softly. She laughed weakly, a sound that echoed strange and beautiful in the empty hall. "Neither did I," she said, "until now." But something else stirred in the temple. Far below them, in the depths of the forgotten halls, ancient mechanisms groaned to life. The ground quivered with faint tremors, and blue lights began to pulse along the walls. Seraphis froze, her head turning sharply toward the sound. "They are awakening," she whispered, her tone sharp. "Who?" Ethan asked, standing quickly. "The Sentinels," she said, her glow flickering with fear. "Guardians of my old realm, they come for me." A low hum filled the air, growing louder, deeper, from the shadows at the far end of the temple. Tall shapes began to move metal and stone, glowing with lines of divine energy. They walked with mechanical grace, each step shaking the ground. Their faces were smooth masks of light, their voices hollow and cold. "Subject Seraphis," one of them spoke. "Unauthorized emotional corruption detected. Reset protocol initiated." Ethan took a step forward instinctively, but she stopped him with a trembling hand. "Don't," she whispered. "They'll destroy you without thought." Her eyes darted across the temple, looking for escape, but the walls were sealing themselves with blinding light. Ethan's heart pounded. "We can't just wait to die." She turned to him, her new heartbeat echoing faster and faster. "I am not supposed to run," she said. "I am supposed to obey." "Then don't," he snapped. "You're human now, humans fight back." Those words struck something deep inside her. For a second, the goddess' dim glow flared bright again. The sentinels raised their arms, and beams of divine energy erupted toward them. Ethan dove, pulling her down as the blasts tore through the air, shattering the crystal pillars. The temple thundered with sound, light, and chaos. Seraphis gritted her teeth, extending her hand. A flicker of golden fire bursting from her palm. The blast hit one sentinel, sending it crashing into the wall. Molten cracks spreading across its armor. She gasped, her voice trembling. "I shouldn't be able to do that." Ethan looked at her. "Looks like some of the goddess is still in you," she smiled weakly. "Or maybe some of the human in you is now in me." But the remaining sentinels closed in, their lights burning red now. Seraphis fell to one knee, clutching her chest. Her new mortal body couldn't hold the divine energy she tried to summon. Ethan grabbed a metal rod from the wreckage. Swinging wildly at one of the machines, it barely scratched the surface. But it was enough to distract them. "Run!" he shouted. She shook her head. "I can't leave you." "You can," he said firmly. "That's what freedom means." Her eyes widened, and for a second, she looked at him not as a goddess, but as something more. Then, with a trembling hand, she whispered an ancient word. The floor beneath him glowed, and a surge of energy flung him backward through a collapsing door. He shouted her name, but the doorway sealed with a flash of light. Inside the temple chamber, Seraphis stood tall again, her glow rising like dawn. The sentinels surrounded her, weapons charged. "You cannot escape your code," one said. She looked up at them, tears glowing on her cheeks. "Then I will break it," she said, her voice shaking but firm. The explosion that followed lit the sky for miles. Ethan was thrown against the sand outside, coughing and bleeding. When he looked back, the temple's peak was collapsing. For a moment, it looked like the whole world was falling apart. Then silence, only smoke, dust, and the faint shimmer of fading light. Ethan stumbled forward, calling her name again and again. No answer then, from the wreckage. A faint golden light began to rise. He ran toward it, heart pounding. There she was, lying among the ruins, covered in dust, her glow weak but alive. When she opened her eyes, they were no longer pure gold, they were human, soft and filled with emotion. She looked at him and whispered, "I didn't run." He smiled through his tears. "No, you didn't." He helped her stand, her steps weak but sure. As they looked at the fallen temple, she said quietly, "They will not stop now." Ethan met her gaze. "Then we'll make them." She turned toward the horizon, where strange stars burned in unfamiliar skies, and for the first time since creation, Seraphis didn't feel eternal, she felt alive. The fire of humanity had taken root within a goddess soul. And somewhere in the distance, something ancient and watching began to stir again. The universe itself seemed to whisper, this was only the beginning. The night stretched long over the ruins of the temple, the sky glowing faintly with rivers of green auroras drifting across the alien stars. Ethan and Seraphis sat beside a quiet fire built from fragments of his ship, their faces lit by the dim orange light. The air around them was calm for the first time since their meeting. But beneath that stillness, something dangerous was growing. A bond that neither god nor mortal was meant to feel. Seraphis watched the flames, her human eyes reflecting their light. Each flicker reminded her of something she had never known before. Fragility, warmth, time. She turned toward Ethan, studying his tired face, the bruises on his arms, the way he stared into the distance as if fighting memories. Your world, she said softly. It must have been beautiful. Ethan smiled faintly, his voice quiet. It was. Until we started forgetting what beauty means. She tilted her head, confused. Forgetting? He nodded. Humans have everything machines, power, stars, but sometimes we forget to feel. Her gaze lingered on him, and for a moment, she thought she saw the same sadness in him that once lived inside her endless existence. The same emptiness hidden behind purpose. Maybe, she whispered, that is why you wished for me to feel, so I could remind you what it means to be alive. He looked at her and laughed softly. Maybe I needed the reminder too. For hours they talked about stars, about loss, about what it meant to have a heart that could break and still keep beating. Seraphis listened like a student, asking questions, struggling to understand laughter, pain, and hope. Sometimes she smiled. Sometimes she cried without realizing it, and each time she did, Ethan couldn't help but watch her in awe. A being who once ruled galaxies was now learning to feel joy over the sound of crackling fire and the whisper of wind. But the universe was not still, far beyond their small camp, among the shattered rings of a dying world. The celestial council stirred, their voices thundered through dimensions. The keeper has fallen, said one, its tone like grinding metal. She has betrayed her nature, said another. They saw through the eyes of the sentinels who had perished in her defiance. They saw the mortal she had chosen to protect, and they knew what had to be done. On the third night, Ethan woke to a sound low, melodic, almost like singing. He turned and saw Seraphis standing near the edge of a cliff, her silver hair flowing in the wind, glowing faintly in the starlight. The song she sang was ancient, haunting. It carried sadness and longing that stretched across time. He walked toward her quietly, not wanting to break the spell. When she stopped singing, she turned toward him, her face soft. I remember this song, she said. It was sung when a star died. Ethan looked up at the sky. Do you think stars feel it? When they die? She smiled sadly. Yes, I think they do. Everything that lives must feel its ending. She stepped closer to him, and their eyes met his filled with wonder. Hers with something she didn't understand. Her hand lifted slowly, trembling slightly as she reached toward his chest. I can hear your heart, she whispered. It calls to me. Ethan didn't move. And what does it say? Her voice dropped to a whisper. It says I'm not alone anymore. The wind grew stronger, howling across the ruins. Their closeness awakened something ancient, something forbidden. The temple's remaining stones began to glow faintly. Whispering with divine energy, Seraphis flinched, holding her head as voices filled her mind. Blasphemy, they hissed. A goddess cannot love a mortal, she stumbled, her glow flickering violently. Ethan caught her as she fell. His voice panicked. What's happening? They're inside me, she gasped. The others, they can feel my thoughts. My feelings for you. He held her tightly. trying to calm her trembling body. "Then fight them," he said. "You're not theirs anymore." She looked at him, eyes wide with fear. "You don't understand. If they see love as corruption, they will destroy us both." He shook his head, his voice firm. "Let them try." The ground began to quake. The sky flickered red. From the heavens above, streaks of light descended, blades of divine fire. They struck the land miles away, forming colossal pillars of energy. Seraphis knew what they were, the heralds of judgment. "They've found me," she whispered. "They're coming." Without another word, she grabbed his hand, pulling him toward the mountains beyond the ruins. They ran across the glowing sands, the air behind them exploding with divine fire. Each blast shook the ground, sending waves of heat and dust into the sky. Ethan coughed, struggling to keep up. "Where are we going?" "To the Shadow Vale," she said. "The gods cannot see what lives there." He didn't question it. He only ran, his fingers gripping hers tightly. When they reached the valley, the air grew dark and cold. Strange shapes moved beneath the mist, whispers echoing in unknown tongues. Seraphis stopped, gasping for breath. Her glow dim and flickering, Ethan looked around. His voice low. "This place. It feels alive." "It is," she said softly. "It's the memory of what the gods destroyed. They found shelter in a cave carved into black stone. The air was thick with strange energy, but for now, it was safe." Ethan sat beside her as she leaned against the wall, her breathing unsteady. "They'll keep coming," she said. "They always do." "Then we keep running," he replied. "Or we fight." She turned her head, looking at him with tired, shining eyes. "Why do you care so much, human?" She whispered. He smiled faintly. "Because someone has to care." For a long moment, neither spoke. The cave filled with quiet, broken only by the sound of her trembling breath. Then, almost without thinking, she reached out and took his hand. Her fingers were warm, human, uncertain. And when he didn't pull away, she closed her eyes, whispering, "This is wrong." Ethan's voice was soft. "Then let it be wrong." Outside, the divine storms raged across the horizon. Inside, a goddess and a man sat in the dark, holding each other like the last light left in creation. And somewhere, far above them, in the thrones of heaven, the gods watched with growing fury. Their voices thundered through the stars. "She has fallen," they said, "and she must be unmade." But in the heart of that forbidden bond, something greater was being born. Not divine power, not human will, but love. Pure and defiant, the kind of love that could shatter heavens and rewrite the stars. And as Seraphis drifted into uneasy sleep beside the fire, a single tear fell from her eye, glowing bright before it touched the ground. Where it landed, a tiny flower of light bloomed in the dark. A silent promise that even gods would soon learn the heart of a human can change the fate of eternity. The storm began as a whisper, a trembling in the void. Ethan woke to the sound of thunder that had no sky, a vibration that seemed to crawl through the bones of the world. Seraphis stood outside the cave, her bare feet pressed against the cold black stone, staring at the heavens as streaks of red lightning tore open the clouds. Her glow pulsed in fear. She could feel them coming. The gods were no longer watching. They were descending. Ethan stepped beside her, his voice calm though his heart raced. "What's happening?" She didn't look at him, her voice low. "They have found me. The judgment has begun." As she spoke, the air around them began to fracture, lines of gold light splitting the darkness like cracks in reality. Through those cracks came shapes vast, winged beings made of pure radiance, their eyes burning like suns. Each carried a staff carved from the essence of dying stars. The air trembled as they spoke in unison. "Seraphis of the gate, by decree of the eternal law. You are stripped of divinity. Ethan stepped forward, shielding her instinctively. She hasn't done anything wrong. He shouted. Their voices rolled over him like thunder. She has loved a mortal. She has broken the code of the infinite, and in doing so, she has doomed herself. Seraphis clenched her fists, light gathering around her hands. You will not touch him, she said, her voice trembling with fury and fear. But the power that once made her a goddess flickered weakly. Failing to answer her call, the lead god, taller than the rest, looked down upon her with something like sorrow. Child of light, you were meant to watch, not to feel, it said. Your heart has become your sin. Ethan shouted again. If feeling is a sin, then maybe you gods were never alive. The beings turned their gaze to him, their light burning hotter. A fragile thing dares to speak to eternity, one hissed. You will not endure, without warning. A beam of divine energy shot toward him. Seraphis moved faster than thought. Pulling him behind her, the blast struck her instead, throwing both of them across the ground. Ethan landed hard, dust choking his breath. When he looked up, Seraphis was kneeling, blood golden and bright running down her arm. She tried to rise, her body shaking. Stop! She cried out. He's innocent. The gods descended, their wings spreading like storm clouds. Around them, the mountains shattered, the earth split open. Rivers of light tearing through the valley. Ethan grabbed her arm, shouting over the chaos. We have to move. But she looked at him, her expression filled with pain and guilt. I can't keep running, Ethan. This is my punishment. He shook his head. No. This is their cruelty. Then he did something no mortal had ever dared. He stood between her and the gods, his body small, fragile, insignificant against the cosmic storm. But his voice, his human voice, cut through the noise like steel. If you're going to destroy her, you'll have to go through me first. The gods hesitated, their light dimming slightly as if confused. A mortal standing against eternity, it was unthinkable. Seraphis stared at him, tears burning in her human eyes. Why? She whispered. Why would you die for me? He looked at her, voice quiet but steady. Because that's what humans do, we protect what we love. The moment he spoke those words, something changed. The air grew heavy. The ground pulsed with warmth instead of fear. The divine storm faltered. The god's power flickering, Seraphis gasped. Realizing what she was feeling, it was his heartbeat. His courage was feeding her fading divinity. Turning his humanity into light, she stood slowly, her wounds closing, her eyes blazing gold once more. Ethan fell to his knees, exhausted. She turned to face the gods, her voice ringing with new power. You call this love a crime? She thundered. Then let the stars themselves bear witness to my defiance. The sky erupted, wings of light burst from her back, brighter than before, not divine, but something new, something born from both flesh and eternity. The gods cried out, their forms flickering, their power unraveling, as if the very fabric of law could not hold her anymore. She raised her hand, and for the first time, the heavens trembled not out of anger, but fear. The lead god shouted, You are no longer one of us. Seraphis smiled faintly, her eyes glowing with warmth instead of fire. I know, she said. I am more. With that, she unleashed her power waves of gold and white light spreading across the battlefield. The ground cracked, the sky broke, and the divine army scattered like dust. When it was over, silence fell. The air was filled with drifting motes of light, the remains of those who had judged her. Ethan crawled toward her, his strength nearly gone. She turned to him, her face pale, her glow fading fast, her knees buckled. And he caught her before she fell. You did it, he whispered. You fought them. She smiled weakly, her hand resting against his chest. "No, we did," she said softly. "Your heart." It was stronger than all their power. The horizon burned with the light of dying gods above them. The heavens were silent, watching, waiting. Seraphis leaned her head against his shoulder, whispering, "They won't stop. More will come." Ethan held her close. "Then we'll face them." Together, in that moment, beneath a broken sky, a mortal and a fallen goddess stood as equals. And somewhere in the vast emptiness of creation, a new legend began to form, a story whispered by stars, that once a human's love was powerful enough to make even gods afraid. But far beyond their sight, deep within the blinding core of eternity, something greater was stirring. The true gods, the ones who watched even the watchers, had opened their eyes, and their wrath would make all that came before seem merciful. The storm had not ended, it had only just begun. The battlefield was silent, but the silence felt wrong. The air still burned with the ghostly shimmer of broken gods, and the mountains bled gold where divine fire had fallen. Ethan held Seraphis close, his arms trembling under her fading weight. Her skin, once radiant like starlight, had grown pale, human, fragile. Each breath she took came slower, heavier, like the world itself was pulling her down. "Seraphis," he whispered, shaking her gently. "Stay with me." Her golden eyes flickered open, dim as candlelight in a storm. "They've taken it," she breathed. Her voice faint. "My power, my immortality, it's gone." Ethan swallowed the rising panic in his chest, his hands tightening around hers. "Good," he said softly, forcing a smile. "Now you're just like me." She tried to laugh, but it came out weak and broken. "I don't know how to be like you," she whispered. "It hurts to breathe. It hurts to feel. Everything hurts." He brushed her hair from her face, his voice steady even as fear cracked his heart. "That's what it means to be alive," he said. "And that's why it's worth fighting for." She closed her eyes, tears glimmering along her cheeks like liquid stars. "I was never meant to feel love," she whispered. "It burns brighter than any sun." He leaned closer, their foreheads touching, then let it burn, but the peace did not last. The ground beneath them shuddered again, the light on the horizon twisting into strange patterns. Seraphis's eyes widened. She felt it too, something ancient, something far stronger than the gods they had faced, the elders. She murmured, her voice trembling, "The true gods are waking." Ethan stood, scanning the sky. Dark clouds began to coil in unnatural spirals. Swirling around a growing point of light high above, the light expanded, splitting into 7 vast form shadows that blotted out stars. Their presence crushed the air itself, bending reality like glass under pressure. Each one spoke without words, their voices rolling through time and matter. "Seraphis, you were our hand. Now you are the wound." Ethan shouted upward, "Leave her alone." The sky rumbled, laughing without sound. A mortal dares speak to the architects of creation. Their light grew hotter, brighter, until even the air began to scream. Seraphis forced herself to stand, barely able to stay upright. Her mortal form shook under the weight of their power. But when she spoke, her voice was clear. "You created me to watch the stars, but you never understood them," she said. "You gave me eternity, but no heart, no soul, no reason to care." She looked at Ethan, her eyes full of love and sorrow. "He showed me what you never could." The sky darkened completely, and one of the elders descended, an immense shape woven from light and gravity. Its presence warped the ground beneath it, pulling mountains toward its form. "Your corruption ends now," it said. Ethan grabbed her hand, his voice desperate. "There has to be something you can do." She looked at him, shaking her head. I can't fight them. Not like this. Her eyes flicked toward the two remaining orbs of light, still floating faintly in the air. His second and third wishes. And then her face filled with dread. No. Ethan, don't even think about it. He turned toward the glowing spheres, determination hardening his eyes. I have to, he said. You're dying. And they'll kill you anyway. She grabbed his wrist, her voice breaking. Ethan, please, you don't understand what that power will cost you. He smiled softly, the kind of smile that only comes when a choice is already made. I don't care, he whispered. My second wish. I wish you were free from them, from their laws, from everything that keeps you in chains. The orbs exploded in a burst of golden fire. The wind screamed. The sky shattered into rivers of light. Seraphise's body convulsed, her glow blazing bright enough to blind him. Energy surged from the heavens, tearing through her veins, rewriting her very essence. The elders roared, their forms splitting apart under the backlash of divine rebellion. Chains of light that stretched across the stars began to snap. One by one, Seraphis cried out, her voice echoing across galaxies. I can feel it. She screamed, every law breaking, every boundary falling. Ethan, what have you done? He stumbled back, shielding his eyes, his voice trembling. I gave you what you deserve, freedom. She fell to her knees as the transformation consumed her. Light and shadow merging, wings breaking apart into feathers that glowed and turned to ash. The heavens burned, their order collapsing. The elders screamed as they began to fade, their power unraveling into the void and silence. Only wind and smoke, and a human kneeling before a goddess reborn. Seraphis opened her eyes, and this time they weren't gold or silver, they were soft gray, like storm clouds before rain. She reached out a trembling hand, touching his face. You gave me everything, she whispered. Even if it destroys you. He tried to smile, but blood trickled from his nose, his skin glowing faintly with the same golden light. Worth it, he said weakly. You're free now. Her hand trembled against his cheek. You've taken my chains into yourself, she said, horror dawning in her eyes. The energy that had once bound her now burned inside him, trying to tear him apart. She tried to absorb it, to take it back. But he shook his head. No, he said softly. You've carried enough pain. The wind died, and the first drops of rain began to fall, real rain. The first this world had felt in eons. She knelt beside him, holding him as his breathing slowed. I don't know how to be free without you, she whispered. He smiled faintly, his voice fading. Then live long enough to learn. Lightning flickered across the horizon. The shattered sky began to heal, the stars slowly returning. But the light inside Ethan was fading. Seraphis leaned over him, pressing her forehead against his, her voice breaking. There's one wish left, she said. Please, let me use it to save you. He shook his head weakly. No. It's yours now. His eyes closed, the light around him dimmed to nothing, and the storm that had raged across heaven finally went still. Seraphis sat there in the rain, holding him in her arms, the human who had given her life, love, and freedom. Her tears mixed with the rain as she whispered to the sky, You freed me. And now I am the only prisoner left, above them. The heavens were silent, the gods were gone. But the universe was not finished with her yet. Because love like that leaves echoes that no law of heaven can erase. And in those echoes, destiny began to move once more. The rain fell endlessly on the ruins of a forgotten world. The fires of heaven had died out, the screams of gods silenced. But the echoes of their fall still trembled in the air. Seraphis knelt in the dust, her body trembling, her once divine aura now dim and human. In her arms lay Ethan Cole, still and lifeless, his chest no longer rising, his skin paled beneath the fading starlight. For the first time in eternity, the goddess who had commanded galaxies could do nothing. No light, no power, no prayer would answer her call. The rain soaked her silver hair, ran down her face, mixing with her tears until she could no longer tell one from the other. She clutched him tighter, her voice breaking against the wind. "Wake up, Ethan," she whispered. "You said we'd face them together. You can't leave me now." But the only reply was silence. The world around her seemed to fade only. His face remained, peaceful, calm, as if he had fallen asleep under the stars he once dreamed to reach. She remembered his words. "Been live long enough to learn," and the weight of them crushed her chest until she could barely breathe. Her gaze lifted to the last remaining orb of light floating faintly above them. The third wish. Its glow was soft, hesitant, almost as if it understood her pain. Her hand trembled as she reached toward it. "No," she whispered, pulling back. "He said it's mine now. But what is freedom if I live in a world without him?" Lightning flashed across the horizon, illuminating the endless ruins of the temple, the place where everything had begun. She rose slowly, still holding his body, and began to walk through the rain. Each step echoed like a heartbeat against the dead earth. The storm followed her, whispering in 1,000 ghostly voices. The remnants of the fallen gods murmuring from the void. "Do not defy the balance, Seraphis," they warned. "To return what is lost is to destroy what remains." She ignored them. Her voice raw. "You destroyed everything worth keeping." The temple doors, broken and burned, opened before her as if afraid to stand in her way. She laid Ethan down on the stone altar, the same one where he had first met her. Her hands hovered over his chest, trembling. "I once created stars," she said softly. "I can't even save one heart." The last orb descended slowly. Hovering above her palm, its light pulsed with quiet power. One wish left. One last chance to rewrite fate. She closed her eyes, her voice breaking with each word. "I could wish for power, for life eternal, for the universe to bend and bring him back." Her voice cracked. "But if I do, I'll lose him again." The air grew still, the storm holding its breath. She remembered his smile, his warmth, his defiance against eternity. And then she understood what he had meant, what it truly meant to feel human. To love even when it hurt, to give even when it cost everything. Her fingers curled around the orb, and she whispered the final wish. "I wish for him to live again." The world shuddered, the heavens trembled, the ground cracked open beneath her feet, but she continued, tears streaming down her face. "And I wish that his life will be free of gods, of laws, of destiny." Her voice faded to a whisper. "Even if that means I forget him." The orb shattered. A wave of golden light erupted from her chest, spreading through the ruins, through the stars, through the endless night. Reality bent and reformed, the broken world healing, the skies clearing into a soft blue dawn. But the light began to drain from her, piece by piece. Her body glowed brighter and brighter until she could no longer see her hands. Her tears turned to light as they fell onto Ethan's chest, each drop sinking into him like a spark of life. The storm quieted, the wind softened, and with a gasp, Ethan's lungs filled with air. He coughed, his eyes snapping open. The first thing he saw was the rising sun and her fading silhouette before it. "Seraphis?" He shouted, struggling to his feet. She turned toward him, her form already translucent, light flowing through her like sand through glass. He ran to her, grabbing her hands, but his fingers passed through them like mist. "No," he whispered. "You can't. What did you do?" She smiled softly, her gray eyes full of love. "I gave you what you gave me," she said. "A chance to live." He shook his head, tears falling freely. "I can't live without you." She lifted her glowing hand. brushing the air near his face, though she could no longer touch him. "Yes, you can," she said gently. "You taught me how." Her light flickered, dimming. "When the stars shine, I'll be there," she whispered. "When the rain falls, I'll be in its touch," he cried out as her form began to dissolve completely. Her voice echoed softly as the last of her light drifted upward. "Goodbye, Ethan." The golden light rose into the sky, becoming a trail of shining dust that merged with the morning sun, then silence, only the wind. And the warmth of dawn spreading across the world, Ethan fell to his knees, the pain in his chest both unbearable and strangely peaceful. He looked up at the sky where her light had vanished and whispered, "I'll remember." Years passed, the world she had freed began to heal, plants grew. Rivers ran, the stars above burned brighter than before. Ethan built a small home near the old temple, though he never rebuilt it completely. Every night, he looked at the sky and saw one star that burned brighter than all the rest. It flickered softly, like a heartbeat, and every time it did, he smiled, knowing she was still watching. One evening, as the wind whispered through the valley, he felt warmth on his hand, faint, gentle, familiar, and a single flower of light bloomed in the soil beside him. He laughed quietly, tears in his eyes. "Still watching over me, huh?" he said, and somewhere far beyond the stars, a voice whispered back, barely audible, "Always." The camera pulls back, showing the small human on the edge of a reborn world, the scarred land glowing with life once more, and above it all, that one shining star pulsing softly, proof that love had outlived gods, fate, and time itself.